to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
It's the last day of June when we're posting this. Happy Pride. I hope you had a great Pride month. I know I sure did.
And I know I did too, and I was participating in a lot of different things. I've enjoyed every part I've done. I've met some new people. I've had a great time. So tomorrow, July 1st, happens to be the halfway point of this year of 2025. Let's look ahead for the next full year. For this LGBTQ plus community, what exactly can we expect in this next year? What do we know? What's going to be happening in the future? Where do we anticipate that we will be on June 30 of 2026?
I can't wait to see what the statistics say. And then next year we can look at this again and see how did we do.
Yes.
I got a message from a friend checking in on me this week, worried about the current climate and just asking, how are you doing? Are you safe? And I said, well, really, in my community, I feel very safe. He said, you are for now, but when this deepens, you, me, and the whole LGBTQ plus community is going to be serving time in the same concentration camps, I'm afraid. They hate us and they're coming for us. Well, I certainly understand the sentiment. It's a scary time, and I've heard that from a lot of people. Is that really what the statistics are bearing out?
It's a little different from that. We'd like to share those statistics with you.
There is certainly cause for concern with the current administration. I don't think anyone would doubt that.
Of course.
We're seeing a lot of things happening. For instance, there were over 900 anti-LGBTQ plus bills in 49 states in 2025 alone so far. So just in this first half of the year.
Right.
Of those, a lot of those are still being processed. A bunch of those have gone through, and a bunch of those did thankfully get rejected. But there is a lot.
The geographic divide is getting a little bit stronger. The high equality states like California, Colorado, Illinois, versus the low equality states like Texas, Missouri, and Florida are really moving farther away from each other.
Yeah, they sure are. And especially for you and Mom, who spend time in Texas each year.
Yes.
I know Mom just told me today about another bill that just passed in Texas defining what a man and what a woman is. And my comment was, they've actually just ruled out a bunch of cisgender women don't qualify. Anyone that's had a hysterectomy no longer qualifies for their definition. And I didn't look at it specifically, but we were just kind of talking in passing. So some of those things are more of a concern.
And we're looking right now at the states, but you look at the federal government, and right now, as of June 30th, the day that we are posting this, there are 88 federal bills targeting the LGBTQ plus rights in our current Congress. So that's where we start.
Right.
That's where we are now.
Now, I want to push back against that a little bit because sometimes we can see that 88 number and we think, oh my goodness, 88 bills targeting us? And what that's really doing is it's grouping together a whole bunch of bills. And some of those bills, you might find that, well, I don't even necessarily agree with that. I would suspect that we would be largely in agreement to be fighting those. But some of those you might think, so for instance, maybe there's a bill that says medical procedures that are being given to people, you just need to produce age verification or have a parent there if they're underage. Mm-hmm. That to me seems like it would be a reasonable bill. Mm-hmm. Or for instance, on the other side, for somebody that says, we need to fight against these people that are trying to put in LGBTQ plus content into math and science curricula, regardless of whether or not it's relevant. We need to cram it in there. Well, I can understand why somebody might say, I don't think we need that. We need representation, but I can understand somebody saying that one doesn't make sense to me. And I think when we look at the reality, there are some really, really bad bills. There's some very bad legislation. But when we group it all together, it's so easy to just score points and say, look at all those bad guys over there and everything that they're doing. And I think we have a lot more common ground than we think.
So we're talking here about the split in the states right here in the U.S. And we've taken it to the federal level, and we're talking about that. But there are things happening worldwide as well. In the U.S., we're living in the aftermath of the 2024 presidential election, and that I get. But we're also seeing not only the state splits, but the progress in places like Taiwan and Mexico, but also rollbacks in areas like Uganda and Russia. And by the way, I want to add, we're in over 60 countries right now that are listening to our podcast. And one of those happens to be Uganda that I just mentioned here. Shout out to you in Uganda who's listening to this. I know that can be a scary time for you. Now, the good news is people don't know who you are. You don't show up on any of our records or anyone else either. We do know the country you're from, and that's all we know.
And we're grateful to have you here. When we move beyond legislation and we look at what is actually happening out there in the world, we're seeing something entirely different. For instance, it used to be that in 2012, only 3.5% of adults identified in some way as LGBTQ+.
3.5%. That's pretty small.
But as of today, that number has climbed to 9.3%. And that number was calculated by a Gallup poll. So it's over tripled in the last 13 years.
Yes, in just 13 years. And what do you attribute that to?
Well, it's certainly not more people becoming LGBTQ+, but I would say it's people feeling much more comfortable coming out and identifying. And we see that because the next statistic comes from when we look at Gen Z. The Trevor Project reports that LGBTQ youth between the ages of 13 and 24 are much more diverse. 28% identify as bisexual, 16% is lesbian, 13% is gay, 16% is pansexual. When I was growing up, we didn't even know what pansexual was. I used to make jokes about that when I worked at Pizza Hut. About all the pans in the kitchen. 12% identify as queer and 10% as asexual. Those are really high percentages. And GLAAD did a study and they found that it's 1 out of 5 now of Gen Z adults, so anyone between 18 and 25, is identifying as some form of LGBTQ+.
Well, let's go back to when I was that age. You talk about you didn't know what pansexual was. When I was that age, we were not allowed to say the word pregnant in public.
It sure has changed.
Yes, it sure has.
And you think about if you're living in a society like that where everything is so tightly restricted, of course, a lot less people are going to be identifying as LGBTQ+. But not only that, you're going to actually have a lot more people that are denying it to themselves. We're sort of assuming that everybody kind of knows. But if you experience same-sex attraction and you grew up in a generation where that was not okay, it would be very easy to tell yourself, no, that's not real, or to come up with some way to rationalize it. That, well, sure, I'm enjoy it, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually gay. But for youth now, there's a much more of a sense that there's nothing wrong with that. Like they said on Seinfeld, that episode where a lot of people were saying, well, is Seinfeld gay? He said, I'm not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That was the theme for the whole episode. And that kind of got us going. Now, that was, 30 years ago now. That started us on the trend to be much more accepting. But now in the 2020s, we are way more accepting.
So where are we going now? We're going to the next point. Where are we going now with healthcare? Demand and access.
A Williams Institute study found that 55% of providers report an increased demand for gender-affirming care. I know that my provider, I've talked about her.
Yes.
She would be one of those that reports that. She's in a small community, and I'm sure 10 years ago, 20 years ago, she would figure, I'm not going to have anybody that's LGBTQ+. I suspect that I'm not the only trans person that she sees. I'm really grateful for how well she has treated me. And that's not a surprise. So it's over half now.
Patients are moving from areas that are not providing the access that they need to places where they are. So that migration goes from restrictive states to refugee situations, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah. And then 1 out of 5 providers are considering leaving that area due to legislative stress.
Oh, yeah.
So we're seeing kind of a loop back to some of what we've had before. So overall, we're seeing this trend. The story that we're seeing so far is that while we're getting pushback on the legislative level and some concerns about things, you're seeing on the popular level, whether it's healthcare or whether it's how people identify, much more acceptance among the general populace. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the trends in media, the trends in the way that LGBTQ youth are being treated right now, as well as the trends on what we can actually be doing.
I'm Monica Scarbin. I love listening to the Transcendent podcasts, probably because I've been a guest speaker. I've been listening to these podcasts for over 2 years now and have found them to be not only inspirational, but very informative and emotionally lifting to my spirits, especially when I'm not feeling very hot. I'm a supporter, and I'm glad to be a supporter. Please go to Transcendent.com, click on support. By as little as $3 a month, you can cancel at any time.
So let's take a look at pop culture. What's happening there and where do we think we're headed in 2026? In pop culture, visibility continues to grow. We see queer creators that aren't waiting for permission to do whatever it is they want to do, make their movies or write their books or what they're going to perform. All of those things are moving forward. And expect in this next year even more representation in film and television and gaming and in music. And with that visibility, though, there comes backlash. I know that. But also solidarity.
We're seeing the numbers are a little interesting in this because, well, independent creators have a much easier time putting out their stories or their music. And those of us in the LGBT plus community have a lot more options of where we can go to. When we look at mainstream media, we are seeing a decline since 2022 in terms of representation in mainstream media. However, we're seeing that according to a Nielsen study, 78% of non-LGBTQ Americans want representation for their LGBTQ plus friends and family and loved ones.
One other thing that we are also seeing in the culture and visibility area is that even in religious spaces, there's a shift. It's happening all the time. More churches are splitting up over LGBTQ plus issues. That means also that the affirming spaces are rising. I see that time and time again. And that's not going to stop. That is something that's going to continue. What I see in this, in the culture and visibility area, The fight for cultural presence will not slow down. We will see more of that in 2026.
Right. So we're seeing here right now, I think that there is a backlash because of what we're seeing politically, so that things have gone down on some places, but there's more of a hunger, not just among those in the community, but among everybody, among culture as a whole. We are waking up and saying, we want more. What we're really hoping that we see is more transgender representation in media, which so far there's a few little bits here and there, but that's what we really need to see. I don't know that we're necessarily going to see those trends go up in the next year, but I would say over the next 5 or 10 years, given the culture and what people are wanting and are hungry for, I think we will see that as time goes on.
Another thing that I think you're going to see a positive trend for us is in the area of generational leadership. We talked before about Gen Z and what they are doing, but Gen Z is going to be the future of politics as well. Youth are both targets of legislation and leaders of resistance. We know that. And that's going to continue, and it's going to get stronger. Not only among the LGBTQ plus community, but also among their peers, because they are considerably more accepting and affirming than the people in my generation were.
We're seeing on the other side is that many young people right now are themselves being then as you said, the targets of legislation. So we're seeing a lot of those bills, back to our very first point, what they use to get people out to the voting boxes. Look at what they're doing to the children. That's a rhetorical point that people have used all through history.
Yes.
Well, what about the children? Think about the children. Back to all of the worst racist rants in the 1800s. Well, the black folks are hurting our children and they're hurting our women. It was always, you pick the people that you can convince society are vulnerable, and then you say, look at how bad things are for them. And you can get people to come around to a really wrong, prejudiced viewpoint when you say that the children are a target.
This is very well known. Socrates said, I am worried about the future generation. So I don't think it's any different now than it was back then.
But with that, you're seeing among the youth right now as a whole, a sense of, not everywhere, depends on where you are in the country, but a sense that it's okay to be who you are.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not gay, but there's nothing wrong with that. Or, you know what? I am gay, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Of course.
The stigma of coming out is not what it used to be. Now, that's not to say that there's no stigma, especially in certain parts of the country, but the trend is certainly going in the right direction. And that's why we're seeing so many more people in Gen Z identifying as LGBTQ+.
And I am proud to say I am left-handed, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm glad we could get that into this one.
But I do want to add that here's where Gen Z is, and we know this. This is what survey shows. Gen Z is not asking to be included. They are claiming leadership.
They sure are.
And that's wonderful.
Yes. I'm really glad to see. When we had Maya here 2 years ago, we interviewed her about what things are like for her in high school. She had some very positive things to say, but I think she also affirmed some of what we're talking about those concerns as well. So this generation's approach to LGBTQ plus identity and politics are going to really shape what's happening in 2026 and well beyond that. The question is, can those of us in the older generations learn from them?
We sure hope so. I've certainly learned a lot.
And we hope that you've learned a lot here as well. And that leads us to the last piece of what can we actually do? These are some predictions that we hope we've given you some reasons for some cautious optimism. But also some concerns that we need to rise up and resist. We need to make sure that we're doing some of the things, and it can be hard to know what can we actually do that makes a real difference.
We certainly need to stay informed and clearly vote. I want to put that all in capital letters. Vote. That is going to make a difference.
And not just voting in the presidential election or when the senators are coming up. The most important elections are happening at that local level. The school board person comes up.
Yes.
Boy, that's where the cultural war is playing out right now. Or there's somebody coming up for a village board position or a county board. That's where the change is really happening. Make sure to get out, find out when those are, and see if you can help your local representative in any way that you can.
Another thing you can do is to support the queer media and the creators and the businesses. All of those things matter, along with organizations like PFLAG. Go to Pride presentations. Go participate. Be part of the group. Lift up people who are considering coming out or that are considering becoming trans, whatever it happens to be. Support those people.
Right, or considering transitioning.
Yes,
That's how we would
exactly.
say. They really were always trans.
Of course.
Yes.
Yep. And make your workplace or your church or your school safer. I am proud to say that when I got on my church council, my first meeting, I think there were 9 people there, and we voted 8-1 to allow gay marriage and become an affirming church. We have moved very quickly in that direction. It has not been a year yet, and we're doing quite well with it. So that's very exciting.
If you're wondering how you can make your church a more accepting place, we did a great episode on that on March 24th of this year. One simple act that tells LGBTQ plus that they truly belong. That was our interview with a friend of the show, Martha, and she did a great job of helping us figure out how we can make our spaces more inclusive. I encourage you to go back and listen to that one if you haven't yet. Given what we know from the data, the actions that really make a difference are the ones that have the impact in lives closest to you.
Yes.
Whether it's the local elections, whether it's your local community, whether it's your local school, whether it's your local church. When you can step out and help somebody directly, help a neighbor, help a friend, help someone in your community, that's where the real change happens. Put out a sign and say, I am an ally. Wear an ally pin. Tell someone, I'm here for you.
I have a PFLAG flag in my front yard right now, and I'm proud of it.
So that's what we are predicting for the future. We don't know that all these predictions are going to come true. It's hard to say exactly what the future holds. But one thing that the future always holds is this podcast. Every single Monday morning, you know we're going to be here for you.
And our information shows that there is a very large number of you that come back week after week. We appreciate that. And if you really want to help us now, share this with someone else. It's the quickest way that we can grow. If we have 10 people out there listening to us and each one brings one more in, we've got 20 people. And when we double and double and double like that, we're approaching 10,000. We're not quite there yet, but we're excited about it, and we're going to hit that very soon. And when we do, we're going to be very happy that it was you that helped us to do that.
We are doing our best to be your voice of positivity, to lift you up, to build you up, to help you remember that you don't have to worry about all of those things.
And we encourage you to contact us, to write us at transcendent@gmail.com and let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you'd like to hear from us. Let us know if you've got some ideas, things we should address, because we do read everyone. With that, we'll see you Monday. I think you're reading everyone, aren't you, Raya?
I do my best.
Yes, you do.
Theoretically.
Between the two of us,
Yeah.
we do read everyone.